it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater, and welcome back to Her Success Story. New listeners, welcome. Her Success Story is about hearing about the journey of dynamic entrepreneurs, leaders, women, and a few amazing men, and how they have navigated their journey in success. Today, I have a guest who is near and dear to my heart. Leah Lakins is from Baltimore, Maryland. Now, Baltimore has a special place in my heart, being a University of Maryland graduate and spending many, many times and continue to spend many years and wonderful trips down to Baltimore. A bunch of years ago, Leah took up her life and moved to Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn to start her own business, Fresh Eyes Editorial. In the past few years, she has worked with major authors, including Steve Harvey doing his bestseller Jump and some of his other books. She is an avid fan of the word, truly meaning Leah embraces our language. She is a graduate from Morgan State University, has a master's in publishing of GW University down in Washington, has spent years in the publishing industry, years as an editor. For fun, Leah does, and I could tell you she does this because we talk about it all the time, Broadway and theater and music, and we had a great night at Alvin Ailey. Leah embraces the arts, and Leah has the patience of a saint for working with authors. Welcome, Leah Lakins, Fresh Eyes Editorial, to Her Success Story.
I am delighted and thrilled to be here. And just to add a word to your vocabulary, natives of Baltimore are called Baltimoreans. So first new word of the podcast.
Baltimoreans. It's funny because in college we used to call them Baltimoreans in fun and jest.
Well, delighted and thrilled to be here, and glad that you and I have been co-partners for the last couple of months bringing your book to life. So delighted to talk with your listeners about our journey in bringing your second book to life and how I work with authors in general to wrestle words together, put them between covers, and help people realize their dreams to become authors.
So I will say, I'll put it out there. I swore at the very early on in Slater's success, a client saw me taking conspicuous notes. In all of our meetings, we would meet in person because we were just a few blocks apart. And I would write and write and write. And she goes, "You're going to put all those into a book one day." And I said, "I am not writing a book." So my first book was Conquering Your Fear of Money, A Woman's Guide to Business Success. And then about a year plus ago, I looked at Leah and I said, "It's time for book number 2. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do it alone. Are you in?" Mm-hmm. And she jumped in with this crazy woman, me, and said, "Yeah, let's get this down." And she goes, "But first tell me what you want to communicate." And I shared with you, the value of what we met through a mutual friend, mm-hmm. a mutual business colleague. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to take all the relationships and all the value that I've learned through relationships over the years and teach that is really what success is. It's business success. It's life success. And you said, I'm in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hence, we birthed From the Bar to the Boardroom, choreographing business success through authentic relationships. Mm-hmm. How do you and why do you say yes to some and no to others?
I really love what makes me say yes is being connected to the story, being connected to the larger purpose behind the story. And being that you and I have had a relationship both as, being my business coach and someone I also value as a mentor, I've known your story. Like I know how important it is for you to be a mother and a wife and that precedes business. I know how important it is for you to maintain relationships, and knowing that was your story, that made me say yes. I was like, by all means, I'd love to, create a story around the stories that are really important to you. And that's helping me more as an entrepreneur to kind of narrow down the stories that I'm really excited about. Like in addition to your book and so many others, I'm currently working on a book with my pastor about the power of prayer, working with another native Brooklynite on his memoir, which is just a really fascinating coming of age story. So I really have to connect with the story so that I can help my clients further bring their story to life.
So you're a gutsy woman. So you know, and I want to acknowledge this, and it takes guts to do some of the things you've done. So 5 years ago, you'll give me the exact date. Is it 5 years?
It has been 5 years.
5 years ago, you had a secure, if not cushy job, a lovely apartment in Washington, D.C., a network of friends, religious community, affiliations with your church, your family, you know, within 45 minutes or less away. And you said you picked yourself up and let it all go to follow a dream. What was that? What the hell?
You know, it's interesting. Like when I look at it, like literally I resigned from my last job, moved to New York, and began working on my first book project with Steve Harvey in a matter of 60 days. Like when I look at that now in 5 years in a retrospective way, I'm like, wow, that did happen. But these were steps that have been taking place for a long time. I wanted to move to New York after I graduated from Morgan in 2002, but that was literally within a year of 9/11. So I said, okay, well, maybe moving to New York right now is not a possibility, but let's start our career in DC and see how that happens. So spent 10 wonderful years in DC and came to the end of that milestone. And I said, you know what? I think now is the time for New York. And literally everything in my life kind of conspired over a matter of about 2 months, and it happened.
So did you move to New York with the Steve Harvey gig?
No, literally, I met his editor when I was still living in DC the fall before I actually moved here. And to hearken to the point of your book about relationships, I met her in September of 2013. I sent her a couple of emails, just kind of kept in contact with her. And literally the week that I moved here, I just said, hey, just want to let you know that I moved to New York. I'd love to have, you know, dinner or lunch with you when your schedule permits. And she replied back, oh my God, you're here. Let's have breakfast next week. So I thought our breakfast next week was just going to be just a catch up to say, hey, no, the breakfast was, I've got a project. Would you like to work on this project with Steve Harvey? I was like, okay, all right, breakfast and an opportunity. So to your point of, you know, creating relationships and, you know, also staying in the follow-up, I was just, you know, being my normal friendly self and just saying, hey, I'm in New York now. Hello, you know.
Hello, New York, I've arrived.
I've
arrived. Who can I meet for breakfast?
So staying in that follow-up with that particular relationship led to so many more, led to me finding my agent, led to me finding other authors who also needed, you know, support. So that relationship was just fortuitous in that it just opened up so many more opportunities. And I'm glad that I took the time to cultivate it and to continue, you know, building with it.
So in the transition, what are, you know, goodness, I know you so well, yet there's so many questions I want to ask you. I will say, so in this transition, in picking up and moving to New York, what were some of, you know, the biggest challenges in that process? Yeah, you had no job. Did you know you were starting a business? Did you know you were going to look for a job? What were you going to do?
Well, I started my company, Fresh Eyes Editorial Services, actually moonlighting. So I had a couple of gigs where I supported, like there was actually a magazine that I did some copy editing for. There were a few people that I copy edited their dissertations. So I had like a nice, healthy stream of, you know, like little clients here and there. And I also was applying for jobs in New York. So I said, okay, either I'll get a job in New York or either I'll, you know, start the business full time. So I was kind of using a kind of a two-pronged strategy. And actually, before I moved here, I think I got to the third round of an interview process for a job in New York. It didn't shake out. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to move anyway. Let's just see what happens. And literally, I landed here on January 8th, 2014.
Wow.
And within like 10 to 15 days, I got the opportunity to work on the book with Mr. Harvey. My former job where I was a book editor, they offered me some opportunities. Another friend who worked at Harvard University offered me an opportunity. And there was something else, because I literally posted about it on Facebook on my entrepreneurship anniversary. But literally, I moved here, and by the end of the month, like 4 other opportunities came to be. So I think when you say yes to whatever dream is calling forth, I feel like the universe is like, all right, she's ready. Let's, come in.
Let's jump in.
Opportunities. So, yeah.
So did you always know that you wanted, so there's, in the world of writing and editing, there's people who write novels, there's people who write, the fiction and the nonfiction. Are you a writer that you want to write your own work? How did you figure out where you fit in and what worked for you?
It's been an ever evolving process, even in running Fresh Eyes now as a full-time business, of really knowing that like I really want to focus on self-help, how-to books, and memoirs. And so those are things that resonate really deeply with me in the nonfiction arena of creating books where somebody can pick this up and at the end of it, they know how to, like with my pastor's forthcoming book, how to, pray more efficiently, or like with your book, knowing how to create relationships more efficiently, or with one of the memoirs that I'm working on, that someone can really see, wow, what a beautiful story. So I want people to close the books that I work on, taking something away and being inspired. I love fiction. I love reading fiction, but sometimes there's too many characters and I'm like, I don't know where they're going between chapter 1 and chapter 20. So I leave that to the experts. But because I actually spent part of my career working 5 years in educational publishing, I love that these books had very clear formulas on how to do things, how to execute things. And so those are the type of inspirational and self-help and how-to books I like to work on, in that, there's an inspirational component, but there's also a how-to. It's not just, 100 pages of just, fluff and inspiring you and making you feel good, but how do you actually make it practical in your life? And that kind of helps me determine, what I say yes to and the things that, I like to align myself with. It's kind of like practical inspiration, if you will.
So I have to share a little bit with our listeners here. So I'm a storyteller by nature. So I will go on and I will share the whole story. And from the bar to the boardroom, Leah probably cut my word count in half easily. Because she's like, nah, too much fluff. They don't need this. This is the story. We want facts here. The story is just to support the facts. And it's like, when all is said and done, I looked at Leah one day and I was like, do I still have a book? We're editing. But it's so true to what you do is you take the inspiration and you make sure there's substance there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because Lord knows most of us storytellers can go on about the story.
Right. Well, even in my journey of transitioning from DC to New York, you give me a cocktail, I can tell you what happened in those 60 days. I can go on and on forever and ever. But the most important part of my story is the relationships that I built, the network that I had in place, the internal work that I did, and also, as you know, very important to me is activating my faith. Those are the 4 things that people need to get out of my story. Granted, you give me a cocktail, I'll tell you what happened in those 60 days. But if I'm putting it down into a book for someone else to enjoy, someone else has to be able to see the points that they can apply to their own life.
How do you draw on your patience with working with when people are telling their stories, right? So when you're dealing with pastors and memoirs and inspirational people, and we're all sharing our innermost, And you're coming from a very practical approach and a business approach of this is the responsibility to the readers.
Mm-hmm.
And you hold that near and dear, your responsibility to the readers.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world do you keep your patience for the creative nuts out there? Like, and I say that with love, being myself.
Right. Literally, one of the authors I'm working on in a project now, she and I are actually in a co-writing process. And each of our chapters should be around 6,000 words. And her contribution to each chapter was coming in at about 8,000 words. And I literally had what I call a come to Jesus conversation with her this past weekend. And I said, you cannot write more than 5,000 words per chapter. And she's like, but Leah, I really want to get out my story. I'm like, not if we want to get this book done. You can't write any more than this amount of words per chapter. And so giving authors clear boundaries of like, you know, I want to get the color, I want to get the flavor, I want to be there, I want to, you know, feel the wind in my hair, but not every strand of the wind. You know, we've got to, you know, put some parameters around it. And even like with your book, I don't even know if I told you this, like we had 16 hours worth of audio for your book, and I think 10 hours made it into the book. So those 6 hours are waiting for you for book number 3, one book at a time. But, but
how to give a woman a hot flash.
But I think every story is valuable, but it's also kind of giving people parameters. I think as you and I kind of got closer to finishing the book, I was like, Ivy, nope, don't need to know that. Get to the point. And, you know, I think toward the end, we were both like, okay, Leah, all right, no worries. So no, I love what I do, so it doesn't feel like, oh my God, I have to employ a lot of patience, but it's learning in my creative process that, you know, if you start down a path, I'm quicker to say, stop, nobody wants to know that. Let's get to the point. So.
So what are some of the surprises that's come to your life in this journey of, you know, having an MBA in publishing to a day job with some moonlighting in DC to running Fresh Eyes Editorial and working with some pretty damn famous people along the way?
Mm-hmm. It's just,
and I'll say myself excluded in that one.
Well, who knows, with this second book, you could be a little bit more famous than you are now. Who knows? It's really been great having an opportunity. Like I, you know, had an opportunity to create a book proposal with a musical legend, not an opportunity to say his name, but he surprised me one weekend by offering me tickets to one of his performances. And I was like, oh my God, that is just, you know, the best thing ever. You know, having an opportunity to travel to one of Mr. Harvey's award ceremonies, having an opportunity to see one of his camps that he does every summer for boys. That's just amazing. And I'm also just like really delighted that I said yes to New York. I mean, you know me, I love being a night owl. It's nothing for me to walk out of my house at midnight to go see a jazz performance at 1 a.m. There's nothing for me to, you know, decide, you know what, I'm going to take this today off and go to a museum. I love being an entrepreneur, and what you've taught me as my business coach is that I get to create my business around my life. So it's been a 5-year work in progress to figure out, you know, when is my optimal time to be creative? How much time do I need off? When do I like to sleep? But giving myself that creative room to figure that out as an entrepreneur and figuring out how to best support the authors that I want to support. It's been a wonderful discovery process. And I think, you know, it only took 5 years to figure it out. So
there is that. So in looking, you know, I think one of the greatest lessons you have brought to my table has been your staying in the pulse of, because I said this in 2014, it doesn't have to be that way forever. It could be good in 2014. And in 2016, I've learned new things and I'm evolving. And you have this beautiful thing about staying in the evolution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit about, in your journey, You know, you go into something, you see it one way, and then you give yourself the chance to continue to grow and evolve. And a lot of people put a lot of structure around things, and I'm not saying I'm not one of them. And sometimes that gets caught in our own way.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a balance of, like, I look at having both the structure and the creativity. Literally, I have these little reminders on my desk. One says organization and the other says creativity. And for me, it's like you have to have some type of frame around what it is that you're creating. Like, I've known since I was 6 years old that I wanted to do something with words. I didn't know it was going to be an editor. At some point, I thought it was going to be a journalist. But my general frame is being a wordsmith, being a person who works with words. And then I give myself the permission, once I have the frame, to throw as much paint at the wall as I want. Well, maybe I want to be an editor in DC. Maybe I want to do it in New York. Maybe I want to focus on books. Maybe I want to focus on marketing writing. You know, I give myself all the permission to throw paint at the wall. But then I step back and I'm like, is there more paint than frame here? Can I see the frame anymore? Or, you know, do I need to break down the frame and create another one? I think, you know, on the onset of a birthday in a couple of weeks going into a new decade, like, my life is completely different than I thought it was going to be at the top part of this decade. You know what I mean? But I'm really excited that I gave myself the chance to keep playing with the frame and to keep, you know, throwing different things at the frame to see what it will work. Because that's the exciting part. That's the fun part of just saying, you know, how can I break out Play-Doh and look at this, you know, a little bit differently? So not that it's not scary, not that it's not like, oh my God, did I really just pack up my entire life and move to a new city? But taking on those big challenges, you know, using the frame loosely has, you know, been really helpful.
So what, in being now a New Yorker at heart,
I am.
what are some of the things that have surprised you in the last few years? What is something that's made that impact and surprised you now that you've taken on this piece of the journey?
Yeah, I think I've said this to you a couple of times. It, like, really surprises me that I run into people on the subway, or that, like, I run into people on the street, and I'm like, I thought New York was like this big gigantuan city. It is not. I mean, it's large and spread out, but I mean, there's nothing for me to walk down the street in Brooklyn and someone says, Leah, I'm like, who knows me in Brooklyn? Like, Leah, everybody knows you in Brooklyn now. So,
you know, and I get that. And for our listeners, this isn't just, you know, Brooklyn's a small neighborhood. You know, I would get a text from Leah. It's like, hey, I was just passing through Grand Central and you'd never believe who I ran into.
Right.
And I think that speaks to something about your level of awareness around you with people and what you truly manifest for yourself.
Right. And I think, I mean, one of the beautiful things, I think, simultaneously as I began coaching with you, I also joined a networking group that I was a part of for 3.5 years. And just, you know, recognizing that at the end of the day, the people in this networking group were so similar to people that I worked with in corporate America, had the same hopes and dreams and wanted to build businesses. A little bit different than working in a corporate structure, but we were all on the same journey of wanting to build business, giving each other genuine referrals. So it was just wonderful to see that in a different context. I mean, literally this last weekend, I had lunch with the wife of one of the members of my group. I'm currently working on her young adult novel. And it was just great to know that she and our relationship came out of my networking group. And like, things like that can happen in New York if you're open to the possibility of that coming forward.
So there's a couple of things I want to ask you. I'm going to start with tips for you and I have said, oh my goodness, everybody looks at you and say, oh my God, I want to write a book one day. I want to write a book one day. So for all the people that look at you or we've all, as our listeners, might have felt or heard others say, one day I'm going to write a book. Where do you start? What's any of the tips that you can share forward?
I would say that you have to find a way to get into a regular writing and creativity practice. And I intentionally say writing and creativity because sometimes for me, writing actually shows up as me speaking words into a recorder or speaking words into my phone, and then I'll edit them later, or I'll jot down a quick note as something flies into my head on the subway. I think making a regular practice to either write or to capture your ideas on a regular basis, I think that's really helpful. As you know, like everybody isn't a formal writer, but everybody can have a formal bucket of ideas. And I think making a regular practice of capturing those ideas, whether you capture it on your phone, capture it in a voice memo, make it a regular practice. Either it's once a week, a couple of times a month, whatever, but just get into that regular practice.
And a tip for people who say, one day I'd love to if I could.
I feel like, from when I entered the publishing industry, 16 years ago till now, the playing field for becoming an author there's much more, there's a lower level, I don't want to say lower level, but it's more accessible. There's more accessibility to becoming an author with Amazon and Ingram and other self-publishing outlets. And so if that's something that you want to achieve, it's much more accessible now. There's many more ways to get into it. I would advise everyone, either, getting into a writing group or having, a group of friendly readers who will look at your work. But get your story out, but also have somebody else to vet it. I don't want to necessarily say that everybody should take the plunge into hiring an editor or a co-writer like myself, immediately off the bat. But also,
I will say they should.
They should.
They hold you accountable to get stuff done.
Well, that too, but everybody may not be ready for that level of accountability yet. So take the baby steps, whether it's, a group of 2 to 3 friendly readers. And then if you're ready, to have an editor and co-writer for accountability, then you can take that next step. But becoming an author is more accessible than it was when I entered this industry. So, don't make that one day can be 2 days. So, keep that dream at the forefront of your mind and build that community of support around you to make it happen.
So I have to say, one of the things I admire about you is you have your business and you have the work you love. Mm-hmm. And then you have everything else you've created in your life. So let's talk a little bit about some mentorship that you do of young children and reading and writing.
For the past 2 summers, I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with a program with the National Book Foundation called Book Up. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to mentor and share literacy, the joy of literacy with middle schoolers. And it's also always just so delightful for me because I'll come into a room and it's like a very boisterous group of, 10, 11 and 12-year-olds. And then I break out a book and create some fun activity and they all sit down and listen. And I'm like, this is great. And this past summer, I had evaluations at the end. And the sweetest thing, one of the kids said, the activities were fun and the teacher was pretty. And I'm like, oh.
Out of the mouths of babes.
Yeah. So to me, it's really important to give back to the next generation. I didn't see anybody, who looked like me, who was an editor and writer. And I didn't even know what an editor and writer was when I was in middle school. So for me to show up at who I am and to make this positive difference, really, it thrills me more than it thrills them. So just really glad to be able to give back that way.
I love that about you. And in the same way, when you talk about having writing circles, one of the things you've done as not the main piece of your business, but you said, you said to me years ago, it's important to bring together people who just want to write.
Right.
And you've kept that, in your world and continuously, for those fortunate enough to be in the New York area.
Right.
And maybe you'll take this in a bigger way one day. But you gather together writers. Why do you do this?
I do this particularly for beginning writers because I feel like there are people who aren't established or published writers who are like, well, I've been secretly writing in my journals for years, or I've got these ideas, but I'm scared to put it out in the world and I'm scared to let anybody look at it. So the reason why I run writing workshops is to help writers have the organizational skills to put their writing together, to have the confidence to know that they can indeed be a writer, and just give them permission to be creative. One of my favorite books in the last couple of years is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which is all about having permission to create a creative life. And it doesn't have to be, you have to be some big published author, but I feel like I love working with beginning writers just to give them that permission to say, you have, the ability to write. I mean, I was literally in church 2 weeks ago, and I'm in the process of ramping up my next round of writing workshops. And my friend Levi was sitting here, and my other friend Melissa was sitting here, and Levi was like, I'm working on my sci-fi novels. I think I want to get that done today. And then Melissa's sitting on the other side of me and says, I've been working on my children's books for a couple of years. I think I'm ready to get them started. And I'm like, okay, God, message received. Okay, got it. There are people who need to be supported around this. So I love to support the beginning writer and just to give them the tools and the courage and the permission to be creative.
I love that. And I love that you have within your business and life, you always have the ability, you show up with the ability to meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a very special trait.
Well, thank you.
So share a little bit, anybody who's never participated in a writing workshop, you have some getting started soon.
I am doing a writing workshop in March on Sunday, March the 3rd, 10th, and 24th, and Saturday, March 16th. So it's going to be a 4-part series where I go through the process of helping you find the key words around your book, helping you to find the key stories for your book, and bringing your book to a beautiful crescendo. So really walking beginning writers through this process of discovering their voice, discovering what they want to put into their writing, and discovering the different elements that will help them and support them to be courageous around creating their writing.
I love that. And thank you for being in it for not just the major celebrities who you also write for, not just all the other people you write and get our stories out, but for helping and being there to help the aspiring writers, be it any age, including from middle school on up.
Right? Indeed. Well, no, it's my pleasure to, as I'm, serving, these larger celebrities, it's like, I know a lot of people like, oh my God, I want to, work with you because of the caliber of people that you work with. But I love, that I had someone was just like, well, I know you work with XYZ celebrities, so I know you can't help me. And I'm like, no, don't make that assumption. I love working with everyone if the opportunity and the story presents itself to do so. So I love, working with everybody from, middle schoolers all the way up to the highest celebrities. So.
Well, you guys, check out Leah Lakins, Fresh Eyes Editorial, and Leah's support from the bar to the boardroom, choreographing business success through authentic relationships has been a journey and a learning experience for me, as I'm always in the world of continuously learning. And it has brought together the heart of getting this book done and the value of truly having relationships and having unconditional love and support and surrounding yourself with it. When you get a book out, it takes a lot of you uncovering your deepest, darkest, oh my God, I never thought I was going to share this, let alone at least share it not in the bathroom. So to speak, I'll sing in the shower. Don't let me sing anywhere else. And then Leah and I would sit down and she's like, okay, start singing, girlfriend. And I was like, I don't really have that kind of voice. She goes, oh, you're going to sing for me. Truly has made it a journey that is invaluable to me because it's the importance of it is the importance of the mission, the importance of not believing I am or I'm not a writer, but the importance of showing up to get a story out there to help others
Mhm.
be able to learn and grow the relationships that will make a difference in their world. And I could not have done that without you, Miss Lakins. So thank you, Leah, from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be your creative co-pilot. It has been my joy.
And listeners to her success story, remember to check out Leah Lakins, Fresh Eyes Editorial. You guys interested in joining a writing circle? Leah has that for you. You're interested in learning more about what it is to have the support of an editor and a writer and potentially be an author yourself? Share her success story forward. Let us know in the notes what you like, what you want to hear, so we can continue to deliver fabulous guest content and help you all and all of us together grow in our journeys. See you next time.